Hi, everyone. I see a lot of people are coming in now. Thank you all for joining. We'll get started in just a few more minutes since the last session just concluded. So yeah, if you give us we'll wait 2, 3 more minutes just to let some more people come in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All righty, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. First of all, thank you to all of our attendees for coming to today's session. I am honored to present our guest speaker for today's session, Dr. Rashmi Kumar. Dr. Kumar is a distinguished learning instructor at the Weingarten Center at the University of Pennsylvania. She's committed to enabling student success in STEM coursework, developing active ways of learning that enhance their capacity to master complex concepts and to demonstrate competency during exams. At the Weingarten Center, Dr. Kumar has been instrumental in guiding medical school applicants on fortifying studying techniques, exam prep, and exam taking strategies, and giving advice on application items, including perfecting their personal statements, which just so happens to be the topic for this session. Please welcome Dr. Kumar. Thank you.
Thank you, Avi, and everyone else for inviting me. I am super excited to be here. And I have over the years learned that students find the NPHC conference really valuable. And so it gives me great pleasure to be here with everyone. And if there are two things that I'm going to ask you to do, if there is, and we'll start on a positive note. How do we start the day? This is something I do with thousands of students throughout the campus. And take 2 minutes to write something, whether you say it to yourself or you write it down. What will you focus on today? And so don't say, I'm going to focus on studying the whole chapter of biology. That's not a focus, that's a goal, but a micro focus. What are you grateful for? And what will you let go of today? You're welcome to put it in the chat, but you don't have to. And if you also want to think about what is the easiest one to work on and what is the most challenging aspect to work on, I'd love to hear. And I'll share my experiences from students' perspectives. Very nice. Dealing with the imposter syndrome. Today, I will let go of fear. Very nice, Alexia. Thank you. You do have an amazing turnout. Okay, so now I want to ask you, what do you hope to get out of this session today? What would make your day that you say, I found the answer to this query that I've been thinking about? Put it in the chat. Avi is monitoring the chat and he has full freedom to interrupt me anytime to say, hey, we have this question, can we answer it? Avi, do you see anything that catches your attention?
Yeah, it seems like we have a lot of focus on, how personal should a personal statement be,
Mhm.
what kind of experiences would be good to focus on, how we can handle or prepare different aspects of, the applicant when it comes to preparing their application.
Sure.
So yeah, and I know your presentation will definitely touch on those aspects, and I'll make sure to ask the questions at the end, because even though I know I have the full freedom, I don't want to interrupt your fantastic presentation.
Well, you're kind, so let's get started. So what makes a statement unique and compelling? These are 4 metrics. You want to measure your statement every time. Does it hook the reader's interest? Does it make the reader want to read beyond the first few sentences? The point of the personal statement is to let the readers, and there'll be multiple readers for each application that you send, will it make more than half of them say, this is a statement that we should come back to again? This is not a cookie cutter statement. It is not an ad nauseum statement of how good they are. They have heard that you are good candidates, you are capable candidates, and that you would like to get them to pay attention to your application. So always remember the first does it hook the reader's interest, or will it be a statement that will look like the ones you find online, which will say how good you are, how many experiences you've had, how many awards you won, how many times have you been president of 5 societies, of 5 student organizations? My experience tells me that's not what they're looking for. That's in your resume. It's already been captured. Now you want to state and paint a personal portrait of yourself that talks about how you have responded to good things and bad things, and don't ignore the bad things. So we'll talk more about that. And does it tie and coalesce? So think about how many things or units are in your application. Your resume, what else? Your GPA, your BPMC GPA, your MCAT score. Does anyone else think of others? Your meet score, sure. extracurriculars, okay? Activities. So would you say the activities are different from the extracurriculars? That's something very important, Phoebe, the letters of recommendation. Personal interest beyond academics and medicine. So we've already counted, they could be 6 to 8 units in your personal statement. And do they corroborate each other? Do they paint the same picture or a similar picture, but not exactly replicating? So your personal statement does not have to mirror the resume, but it has to pick things from the resume where someone who's reading it, let's say I'm reading an application, I can say, yes, Avi, is it okay if I use your name as an example?
Of course, of course.
Okay, so could I read Avi's application and say, oh yeah, what he's saying in his personal statement is also reflected in his resume. Now, Phoebe mentioned something important, the recommendation letters. If you say you enjoy working with animals, your recommendation should reflect that. And constantly think about 3 things that should come into bearing. Your experiences, your skills, and your achievements. They should all tie together. And let's go back to the previous slide. If you are hoping that you will tie in all the different elements of your application, then also think about what words or phrases will you rely on for them to get hooked, the readers to get hooked into your application. So we are here. And now if I put them in a Venn diagram where you have experiences, skills, achievements in different circles, and now try to find a commonality. How will you know that those 3 things corroborate each other, but they also pick a central theme? That central theme is the crux of your personal statement. I have, in the last few years, worked with many students who have successfully applied, gone through the secondaries, and been selected at more than one school. And I talked to 3 of them in the past month after I accepted this invite, and they gave me permission. So I'm not going to use their names. One was an athlete, so she had experiences on the athletic floor. She also had other skills and achievements. What happened was that during the time she was working and being an athlete, she got injured. She picked something from that experience to reflect her personal statement, the crux of her personal statement. And it became about resilience. That one word resonated throughout her personal statement without saying, I'm resilient. It's what the takeaway became, not that she was saying, I am a, resilient person. So I'll show something. When you are saying you are a hard worker, you should not just say it. That's fine to say it. I would reserve that for an interview, but your personal statement should reflect that you are a hard worker. And does it mean that you have to say you were president of 4 societies, or you were secretary in 3 others, that you didn't bench lab experiences, you volunteered, and all that? That is a very tough one to demonstrate and to think about. So if you say your central theme is that you're a hard worker, it should also demonstrate how you have come across challenges of time and effort and made things work according to you. I see some questions, so I'm going to go on to those. If we don't have any previous experiences related to the discipline, how personal is too, okay. So if you don't have experiences related to medicine, you don't have to say, I don't have experiences related to medicine, but you can say, while I do not have many experiences, or while I did not have many opportunities to do bench lab, I have always been interested in the field of medicine. And my course selection proves that. I have gone to talks on the campus, whichever campus you are on, to understand more about medicine. It should not be a yes or no situation. It should be you did not have opportunities, there wasn't time. Don't say, I was working 3 jobs and that's why I didn't have time. That's not a plausible, helpful statement. Say that whenever you were able to, you found time and commitment to understand how the field of medicine evolved. Does that answer your question, Ankit? Now, someone was asking how personal is personal, keeping in mind that you don't want to give personal details, but you do want to share something. For example, the student I am discussing, she talked about how she broke her ankle, and she was a lacrosse player. You can't run if you have a broken ankle, and how she made that experience work for her by volunteering on the sidelines of the lacrosse teams, by going on the trips of the lacrosse crew games to say, I will help the team achieve what they have on task. I will help students or peers. I will coach them. I will tutor them, but that way I can be a vicarious part of the team without missing out. So yes, you are not playing, but you are part of the team. Can you say anything? Can you give examples that demonstrate that? And then she chose her coach, who really did not get to coach her in that sense, to write a recommendation letter. When she came to me, she said, you know, I broke my ankle 6 weeks after the semester started. So I don't think he has seen me play. And we discussed, yes, he has not seen you play, but he has seen how willing you were to find ways to stay connected with your team. That's the critical thing, okay? We've all faced struggles and sacrificed. It could be, I would say, Ankit, that write it down and then say, should the statement be more of a story? The statement should be a story. It should be a narrative. It should not reflect the resume word for word, but it should mirror what the people who are going to write recommendation letters for you will, that should come across in the personal statement, loud and clear. Don't ignore the challenges and failures. For example, among my students, organic chemistry is the beast. And they are afraid to say that they got B pluses or C's in organic chemistry. It's okay to say, in the beginning, I did not do well in orgo, but I soon realized that I was, and I'm just talking from my experience, I soon realized that I was studying organic chemistry as the way I studied general chemistry. And I realized I had to change. I had to adapt to the discipline. If you say that, it makes you not a person who was not good at organic chemistry from the very beginning, but it shows that you are willing to learn from mishaps and challenges and make more changes. Okay, so we have a hand raised from Gabriella. Go ahead.
Are you able to speak, Gabriella?
Okay, we'll come back to Gabriella's question then towards the end, because we have so many things to cover. For example, first year in any college is the hardest year. And so if your GPA was, let's say, 2.9 in the first year, it's okay, but talk about it. College was a new experience for me. I had to learn how to manage my time. I had to learn how to juggle responsibilities. At the same time, I had to learn how to manage time across multiple commitments. I had to learn what to cut back on and what to prioritize. If you say things like that, it makes you look human. It makes you look that you learned from that experience, from not being able to do everything you wanted to do at the level you wanted to do in the very first year. Questions? So how do you ensure supportive attributes? Look for who you are going to ask to write your recommendation letters. By first semester of junior year, if you're not going to take a gap year, that's definitely a good time. If you're going to take a gap year, it's more important. You want people to remember that they agreed to write you a recommendation letter before you leave campus. So if you are thinking, oh, I'm going to take a gap year or 2 gap years, start scanning who will make good recommendations. From what I know and what I have heard from my students who've been accepted, that when they went for the interviews, people mentioned not their resume that much, but their recommendation letters as well as their personal statement. The resume is a public document. Everyone has seen it and everyone knows about it. And we have a tendency to gloat and glorify the resume, and that's fine. But remember, the personal statement is a reflection of your resume without being ad nauseum statement of your resume. Do you see the difference in that? Okay, let's see. Can you explain a little more? Sure. So when you are looking at a combination of resume, recommendation letters, and personal statement, the personal statement is your proxy before you are invited for the interview. The resume is just a document listing things from year 1 to year 2, what you did, what's your GPA, what's the MEET GPA, what's the MCAT score. Those are just facts, and facts don't paint a whole picture of you. That one word, as I'm saying, the one word or phrase that you will create and paint in your personal statement, that is the personal part. It's not about your facts. It's not about your GPAs of different kinds, your MCAT scores, or how many activities you were involved in. They want to know, are you someone who can struggle through med school? Med school is not easy. I work at the University of Pennsylvania, and I work with a large number of med students. Med school is a beast. You have to be prepared for that. So they want to know, are you able to, and are you in recognition? Do you know that it will not be an easy breeze, but will you be willing to adapt and change as things are thrown down your plate? Sure, absolutely. Now, it's telling the story, Ankit, that is true, but are you going to tell the story in a way that reflects the other entities, weaves them together, and says things that people could say, I don't need to read the resume. I already know about this candidate. I don't need to read every little thing this person has done, because when I am reading the personal statement, I get to understand the kind of person who will be coming to me for an interview, the kind of person I might apply, the kind of person who I will encourage to apply to this university. Now, what will the recommenders say about you is very critical. I often tell people, write down what they would write hypothetically in different letters. What will Professor so-and-so write about you? What will the Dean of the Housing Department write about you? Were you an enabler? Were you an obstructionist? Did you help others when they were challenged? Did you only think about your own self as you were going through different things? And that is a confidential document. You will not get to see it. I write recommendation letters for, I would say, 2-3 dozen students in a year, just med students, but others are others. And that document, the first thing you will be signing on that you agree not to ask to see the recommendation letters. That means it gives them full freedom to write about you. And if that's the case, you want them to remember the positive aspects. Now, for example, if someone says, in the first 2 years, he had a difficult time managing a job, volunteer, internship, and courses, that's fine. It makes you look human. But if the recommender writes that you dropped out of commitments, you didn't show up to things you had promised to go to, that is not good. So you see the difference. If someone says this student had to learn how to manage different things, that's a great thing. If someone says this student took on a lot of things and I really applaud his commitment or her commitment to wanting to do everything, but this student did not realize that he or she was taking on so much that he did not show up to many of the things he had or she had agreed to. So there's a difference. It says something about you, it says something about your personality, and it says something about how you hold your commitments truthfully. Okay, let's look at some new Q&A. Yeah, the pandemic has been a difficult time. I'm glad you raised that question for many students. For example, students who are juniors now, this is the first time they are truly interacting in-person classes. They have mostly been in remote classes. For most people, remote classes have been easier, even though we don't like to admit that. So the pandemic definitely has changed things, and that could be part of your personal statement. Let's say your theme is adaptable, flexible, then that could be a good way to say, the pandemic or the lockdown or remote learning was something I was not used to, and I had to learn how to manage my time during the remote learning. I had to learn how to engage with peers, And all those things taught me this about myself. It's not about what you had to do, but what you gained from that experience. Keeping in mind that because we all went through the pandemic, most people know what kind of challenges and failures or obstacles it brought for everyone. But mentioning what you learned or what you gained in that personal statement is going to be helpful. Now, always keep in mind a personal statement is like a story. So try not to use superlatives. Try not to say, my peer said I was the best RA ever. My PI said my research had produced the highest level of results or the most catching results. Those superlatives, again, are like a bragging thing. They are not useful. But if you say, now think of the quantity and the quality. If you say, when I was working as a volunteer and interning in the lab of so-and-so, together, or the team found the reasons for the causes that lead to disease, whatever. I worked with the team who was responsible for finding the factors that inhibit ADP production in microbes. That is a great quality versus saying, I put in 18 hours per week to volunteer at a lab. So you see that quantity is already in your resume. But to say that when you worked with a team and this is what you were able to accomplish, that is not just about the team, it's about you. Try not to use superlatives like best, highest performer, highest grades at all in the personal statement. Stay away. Now, there are three things that you want to be careful of: factual, grammatical, and public. Factual is, it includes the murkiness of plagiarism, and it includes are the statements you are putting in the personal statement or the claims you are putting in. Can they be verified by looking at the recommendation letters? Can they be verified by looking at your resume? Can they be verified by other things? So whatever you put in the personal statement should be verifiable. It should be a proven statement. Grammatically, I see many students who bring personal statements to me. The subject-verb agreement, which I know that you're all great writers or have the potential, is the biggest undoing. And you also want to be aware and be respectful of ADA compliance as well as social and cultural appropriateness. When you see this current slide, is there something you would like to think about, ask me about.
I think one of the participants has their hand up, so I'll go ahead and
Sure.
call on Gabriella. Should be able to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I had a question about like once you do your personal statement, like I guess like my initial question was, when we reapply, should we talk about our initial reapplication, like application process, or how should we go about our personal statement in terms of like being reintroduced to the medical school you want to apply to again?
That's a great question, Gabriella. So let me say what I heard, and if I am not hearing you correctly, you please correct me. You're saying if you reapply, should you use that same personal statement? Am I right?
More as to how can you bring that experience to your new personal statement, or should you even, well, I believe you should do a new personal statement when reapplying. Would that be the correct course of action?
That would be, and you don't have to mention a previous personal statement because they know that you have applied previously. The new personal statement should reflect a different kind of energy, a different kind of goal, a different kind of ethos. There's no point telling them what they already know.
Got it.
Does
you
that
so much.
help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. We have some Q&As. Who should we go for letters of recommendation? I usually tell students to think of 5 people who can write for you. 2 should be academic, professors. 1 should be the head of wherever you volunteered or did an internship. So if you volunteered on the campus, that could be 1 person. But if you had an external internship, that is very useful. And then everyone does not need to have a PhD. Everyone who writes a letter for you does not need a PhD to write that letter. But everyone who writes a letter for you should have your best interests at heart. Should be someone who is willing to put time into crafting a good letter rather than just writing a run-of-the-mill copy-paste letter that does not paint anything more about you. For example, I call it sandboxing. Let's say Alexia reaches out to me. Alexia, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. And says, could you write a letter for me? I start sandboxing things that I think I remember about Alexia when she was starting this conference 2 years ago, what I have learned, what others have said about her in LinkedIn. Not everything will go in the recommendation letter, but it gives me a starting point. I usually take 3-4 days to write a letter. I'll start with the sandboxing, then I'll think about what would Alexia's resume look like? What are her experiences, her skills, her achievement, and her experiences that I should ask about, talk about? I often tell students, if you have those 5 people spread out, it's okay to say to them, could you speak about my contribution to the team effort to find the ADP levels in the microbes? To the second person, you could say, if you could speak about my participation in the class, that would be great. So each of those recommenders that you're thinking of, don't just ask them, actually give them pointers and think about how those will paint a picture about you. So I have done practice runs with students where I say, okay, ask A person about this, ask B person about this, and you want to ask an academic to write different things about you versus somebody who was the head of your internship. So be proactive and think about what you're going to ask each person to write about you, not just to write a letter of recommendation, but what will be the theme of their recommendation? What will be the major takeaway? I find that a helpful process. Do you want to give them a brag sheet? I would not give them a brag sheet because that can be a big turnoff. I would definitely give them a copy of the resume. I would also write to them in a personal email. The reason I'm asking you to write me a recommendation letter is because I found working with you a very positive experience. I found working in your lab a great experience to hone my research skills. So it's not just about you. You're also asking them to recommend you based on what you found useful in their interactions, in their collegiality with them, and things like that. Does it make sense? I would highly recommend don't just say to people that you found you want them to write a recommendation letter. That's not a great way to start. A great way, I think, is to start by, you took, let's say, Orgo, and from taking GChem or Orgo with you, I also learned about how different disciplines tie together in the field of medicine. I learned the value of turning things on time. And based on my experiences, my positive experiences with you, I'm asking you if you would be willing to write a letter of recommendation. It would mean a lot to me or something like that, but you want to not just ask, you want to explain why you are asking them. So when you are writing your personal statement and it is a story you are creating about yourself, these are the 5 things you want. It should have a sequence, a clarity, an organization, very logical transitions, and alignment between research methods and the claims you make. It should definitely avoid repetition, redundancy, superlatives. And while contractions like saying isn't, don't, and all that have become popular, many people of my age still think that a contraction is not a good piece of writing. Of course, you don't know who the readers will be, but my suggestion would be to stay away from contraction. Instead of saying don't, say do not. So this is a timeline to write a good recommendation letter. Sandbox things. Create a Google Doc or a Word doc, anything that you like, and start dumping in things that you think might be of value to bring up in your personal statement. It doesn't mean the sandbox is not to say everything you dump in it will go into the personal statement, but just to have a place. Many times students will tell me they wanted to write about a small experience, but they forgot about it as they were crafting their personal statement. This is your opportunity. Keep it on your phone, write in it. Then plan for 3 to 4 weeks of writing. They're not writing 24/7. You might write 2 hours a week or 1 hour a week, but it takes that much time to have a story that when you read it, it tells a complete picture of you. And I have not worked with any student who did not have 5 to 8 iterations of the personal statement. It takes time. Keep in mind, this is a very noteworthy document. It's not the document you put together the night before. You want to have time to create something, look at it, make some changes, look at your sandbox, get some feedback from peer advisors, from the career services in your university, or whoever does those kind of academic advice, and then take a stab at it again and write it again. Meanwhile, you might start receiving questions from people who are going to write your recommendation letters, and they might say, Alexia, you remember that? Should I mention that in the recommendation letter? And that's your moment to think, have I said anything about this in the personal statement? So it's a time consuming, but it's not a 24/7 process, but it's a process that you should give time to, and you should give time to in a gentle way, in a way that allows you to write about things you want to. I know we are coming to the close. Passive tense is something we hear that we should not hear passive tense, but I think passive tense is not wrong. It adds to the variety of the sentences. But using first pronouns is useful. Just don't say I in each statement. Count how many times you are saying I in a paragraph. It should not be more than 4 times. It's an easy way to think about my personal statement. Am I just saying I in every statement or every sentence? And also keep in mind, when you are writing single sentences, it should not use the same pronoun more than 3 times, one single sentence. So it should not have I, my, me more than 3 times. I find that a good guide to tell students who come to me personally. Make it simple, unpretentious, and unambiguous. It should not be something that makes one think, what is she trying to say here? I'm not sure. It should be so simple that it looks like a trailer of a great movie you're going to watch. For the closure of the statement, while you're keeping the whole thing simple, use words that you have not used in the personal statement before the last paragraph. It shows that you are willing to take a risk, but you are also willing to bring in new elements. We'll take more questions. Should we ask our professors before we? I would ask them. I think, Fadi, if I said it correctly, don't wait too long to ask professors. If you are thinking of applying in the June cycle in 23 or 24, have a meeting with the professor. Could I come and see you for 15 minutes? I want to talk about the recommendation letters. And then say you would like them to write about it. You will also know who's writing a recommendation letter and has agreed to write a recommendation letter before you need it. You're not scrambling last minute to find someone who will write a recommendation. So meet with people personally if you can, Zoom or virtually or phone, but tell them why you are asking them to be one of your recommenders. Oh, so don't say send a mass email. I think for those kind of things and those kind of asks, it is better to send individual emails. Individual emails that state your connection with that person. You're not just asking, you are asking with a special intent. So if you send a mass email to, let's say, 10 people, you are assuming that they will say yes, or some of them will say yes, but that's not the path you want to pursue. You want to, let's say we have, you are writing to Neha Wapiwala, and if you say, Dr. Wapiwala, I heard you speak at the conference and I have a question for you and I want to, is there a time I can meet with you for 10, 15 minutes virtually or in person because I want to ask something. I'm seeking something. I think we've come to the end, Avi. Am I correct?
Yes, we have. I noticed, I did say in the chat, I noticed there were some, Q&A questions that we hadn't gotten to yet. I will email Dr. Kumar the questions and then she can send the response back and then I can post them onto our NPHC Discord or like send them through the newsletter, just so we have answers for those questions.
That would be great. I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. And thank you so much for the great presentation. I can assure you from looking at the chat, everybody greatly appreciated your wisdom and knowledge on the subject. So thank you once again. And thank you to all of our attendees for coming as well. This was an excellent presentation and it was great to share it with all of you. And yes, as Alexia said in our chat, our next session is preparing for medical school and the application process. And it is starting in just a few minutes. So I would recommend all of you guys to go check that one out. But again, huge round of applause for Dr. Kumar. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to give us such an amazing presentation.
Well, my pleasure. And I wish you all the best. And I'm happy to, respond to any of the questions personally. Thanks, Avi. Thanks, Alexia.
Thank you. All right, I will go ahead and end the webinar right now. And you are okay if I also share your email when I post the responses, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so for any of the attendees left, I will make sure to forward Dr. Kumar's email as well. And if you have any more questions, she can answer those as well. I'll try to get the email sent to you by the end of the conference today, if that works.
Okay, perfect. Take care.
All right.
All the best.
You too. All the best to you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, and the slideshow as well. Would that be possible to share?
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
you're asking me if I can send the slideshow to
Yes.
you?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kumar, and thank you to our attendees. I will go ahead and end the webinar now. So thank you all and looking forward to seeing you at the next session.